Hello and welcome. I'm Lori Balderas and I'm so happy you're here. Well, before we get to anything else, not that you don't already know this, but I would just like to announce that we have a new Pope, Pope Leo the 14th, the first American Pope. How amazing is that? Unless you've been in a cave or living under a rock, you probably already know that. But I just want to personally welcome Pope Leo. I know he's probably watching, Fresh Catholic, but I just want to say that I am praying for Pope Leo that he will be strong and wise and filled with love and compassion for people, but also to be very focused on our Catholic faith and our Catholic teachings. And so that's my prayer for him. And I pray that he will be a good shepherd to all of his sheep and that we will all support him and pray for him. And it's very exciting news. So welcome, welcome. And also, I wanted to explain something. So I had originally planned to do a Mother's Day episode last week. The past 2 years, I've done an episode where it's the week prior, like the Monday prior to Mother's Day Sunday. And through the whole week, like my social media is all about Mother's Day. But because we were in this papal transition and the conclave and all those things this past week, I had a special guest last week to discuss those things, Catherine Jean Lopez, which was a great interview. If you haven't heard or watched that, go back and have a listen or watch on YouTube. And she explains different things about that transition, which has now come true. So that's one reason it's a little off, but that's okay because May is Mother's Day month. So that's how I'm going to look at it. So today I'm going to do a Mother's Day episode, even though Mother's Day was yesterday. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And so if you notice, it'll be a Mother's Day episode this week. All my social media will be talking about mothers and honoring mothers. So don't think I've lost my mind and think, Lori, Mother's Day was last week. No, this was a plan somewhat, but I'm just postponing it a little bit. So anyway, I hope you had a wonderful, beautiful Mother's Day. Today, this episode is called The Gift of Motherhood. I am a mother of 3 grown-up children. I can't believe that they're grown-ups like they are. I love my children deeply and desperately, and I love them all equally but differently, if that makes sense. So I'll talk about that later in the episode, but I am a very proud mother of my 3 children. And I also I'm very blessed that I still have my mother with me. So that's a big gift from God that I still have my mother. I know a lot of people struggle at this time of year because they don't have a mother for one reason or another. So we'll also discuss that later in the episode. So we're going to talk about all different parts of motherhood today. The cherries, the challenges, and some things that are kind of trending in motherhood these days that I either think are great or I struggle with. So we'll talk about all that today. So first of all, let's talk about the facts of motherhood. Let's talk about the official definition of mothers. The female parent of a human being or animal, if you're an animal. So that's pretty straightforward, right? That's the official from the dictionary definition. But in my opinion, the unofficial definition of a mother or a motherhood is loving, caring, nurturing, guiding, watchful, protective, comforting. I believe that the mother binds the family together and is a major pillar of the family. I think there's many pillars in the family, but she is a major pillar. Of course, the father being the other pillar. Role model, she's also a role model and a teacher in many ways. This is my unofficial definition of motherhood. So, I don't know about you, but I love watching nature videos. I think they're very fascinating. My dad was a naturalist. My dad was a scientist. He loved nature. And so he gave me that love of observing peoples, and nature. And so if you observe mothers in the wild, they really are fascinating to watch. They are very nurturing. You see them snuggling their young. Certainly they're feeding their young, which I think is beautiful. They watch over their young in a different way than the father of the animal kingdom does. So the mother, there's the mother bear syndrome, which is very real and can also happen in human form. I know I have been accused or labeled as a mother bear, which is very true. If somebody messes with my babies, they're going to get the claw from me. That's for darn sure. And I've noticed this in my daughter as a mother. You mess with her babies, you better watch out because she's going to come for you. So I think it's interesting that mothers in the animal kingdom and human kingdom are known to be loving and nurturing, but then there's that other side of them. And they'll also, they control their own babies. You'll see a mother bear batting her babies if they're getting out of hand. Or, mothers, I've noticed mother ducks will kind of guide their babies, to go a certain direction. So I think that's really beautiful. And I do think that it happens in the animal kingdom and with human mothers. So I think that's beautiful. I also think one of the beautiful things about being a mother and being a woman is we were given this body by our Lord. And the woman's body is absolutely miraculous, what it can do. I mean, it really is just, sometimes it's downplayed, the body, or sometimes it's given too much attention and used in maybe, not the best ways, not the most wholesome thought patterns about a woman's body. But a woman's body is so incredibly miraculous because the Lord has created this body to create human beings. Of course, we need our, male counterpart, and the Lord made our bodies to fit perfectly together and to also have this moment where we create life. How incredible is that? I mean, that's a whole other episode in itself that I would love to do one day. But I just think, when you think about the woman conceives, she carries this baby. For all of you out there who've been pregnant before, it's really quite something. It starts out, you don't feel super great. You are very tired. You're very hungry. You don't, you're not feeling physically wonderful, but it's because that baby is settling in. I had a doctor tell me one time to make me feel better about feeling so nauseous. And she said, the reason you're feeling nauseous is there's something inside of you now and it's settling in and your body has to get used to it. And so that's why it's not feeling quite that great at this moment. But then as that baby starts growing, and we also have to remember, as Catholics, we believe that conception is when life begins. And so you have this human person in your body, and it's not just any human person. It's a beautiful blend of you and your husband, and you create this beautiful being in your body. And as it goes along, you are feeling better and better. Second trimester, I think, is, the best time of pregnancy. And the nausea has subsided. This baby's growing. You're starting to feel the baby moving around. And boy, and you're hearing that heartbeat. Oh, nothing better. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. And then, of course, you go into the larger part of your pregnancy, and it becomes very real at that point. And, you end up, you have this baby. It's a lot of, stress and anxiety prior to the baby. During birth is, it's a rough time. They call it labor for a reason. And then, you're thinking, as you're having this baby, do I really want to do this again? This is crazy. What am I doing? And then that beautiful baby is born. You forget all about it, which I also think God did on purpose. And you think, oh my gosh, I want to have 12 of these. No problem. It was a piece of cake, but it wasn't. But you have that baby, and then of course you get to nurse your baby if you're able to do that, and if that's a choice you make. And I think that's a beautiful part, that God made our body in a certain way to feed our own child. How beautiful is that? There's nothing more perfect than mother's milk. And it's just get your baby off to a good start. 2 out of my 3 kids were able to have my good, healthy milk. My daughter, not so much because of the accident I was in when she was born. Go back and listen to that episode. I think it's episode number 2 or 3. Anyway, it's a beautiful thing to be a mother, and it's such a gift, and it's, it's just this miraculous thing that God created, and I wish it for everyone. There's all kinds of mothers. There are biological mothers, like we just talked about. There's adoptive mothers for the women who maybe can't have babies, which is also a sad thing, I think. Some people, they really want to have a baby. They strive to have a baby. They're trying to have a baby. And for some reason, for whatever reason, they're not able to do that. Now, that to me is very sad. I feel sympathy for people like that. I've never been in that position, so I can't say I know how that feels. I just can imagine that it's a very hard and, it's a sad thing. But I think in anything in life, if something happens and you're not able to fulfill a dream or a wish that you have, you need to, you can grieve over it. You can have your moment of sadness or moments of sadness, certainly, but then think, okay, what am I supposed to do? If I can't do that, and that's been taken away from me, what can I do in order to maybe fulfill that hole that I might be feeling, or that void I might be feeling? And adoption is a beautiful thing you could do. There are so many children in the world that need parents and need a mother. And so that is just a beautiful gift you could give somebody. And so there's adoptive mothers. There are step parents. Certainly in our world today, many people have divorced and remarried, and they take on somebody else's family. I'm certainly in that category. It's not easy to be a step parent. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's very stressful. It's very, it's very challenging, and it's a rough job. It's a rough job to be a step parent. It's hard when you really love somebody and you want to marry them and start a life with them, and you have to take on their family. It would be great if it was like the Brady Bunch and you could blend the family and everybody's happy and, they have their little moments, but for the most part, everybody's just thrilled to be together. That was my wish and hope. That didn't happen, but I'm still hopeful, and I pray every day that we will have peace and harmony in our blended family. There's also women who fill a motherly role. There might be a situation where you don't have a mother, or you are estranged from your mother, or you have, something's, you just aren't with your own mother. There's people that can fill your motherly role, like a grandmother or an aunt or a sister or a friend even. And this is something about being a woman that I think most women, not all women, but most women have that motherly tendency. They've either had their own children and they know how to be a mother, so they want to help people that don't, or they're just good-hearted and kind and caring, and they want to help somebody who might have that void. So I think that's a beautiful thing. Also, like I said, friends could help you with that if you don't have even, any women in your life for whatever reason. So there's all kinds of mothers out there. I believe there's also roles of mothers, like there are stay-at-home moms, there are working moms. There's a combo platter of that. In my personal opinion, I know my mother, for the most part, was a stay-at-home mom, but she did have a part-time job because we needed extra income. And when she wasn't home, my dad was home. So that's kind of how they worked that. I know my daughter she is a stay-at-home mom with her 5 children, but she also has a job. She has a career. And so she does that at her home. She has the luxury that her husband was good enough to build her, she owns a fitness business. So she's got a big gym on her property. So her children, she's right there with her children. Her husband is very hands-on. So they have that combo. So she's kind of a working mom, stay-at-home mom. My daughter-in-law is a stay-at-home mom. I totally support and applaud her for that. I know that that makes my son very happy that she's home taking care of the children, because that was his experience with me. I was a stay-at-home mom. I didn't have a job outside the home. And so I know that gives my son a lot of peace and comfort that my daughter-in-law, Chloe, can stay at home with my other 2 grandchildren. So I wish that people would understand when somebody wants to be a stay-at-home mom and when somebody needs to work outside the home. I don't think there should be a battle. I don't think there should be a contest. I don't think there should be shame or hurt or pressure on either one of those choices. I do think it's a very wise choice if you can at all stay at home with your children while they're being raised. I think that's something that's very incredibly valuable, especially in the early years of your child's life, to know that their mother is close by and their mother is watching out for them and nurturing them. It's not to say that dads can't do that. That's, I'm not against that either, but somebody should be home with those children on a consistent basis that is either mom or dad to take care of those children. Now, obviously, we live in a society where two income households are very, necessary. I mean, just to live. But if at all possible, it might be a strain, financially. But in the long run, I'm gonna personally promise you that you will find that your children will be thriving more if you stay at home and you are, really getting their first years very solid footing. So I think, again, there's these roles. There's been the original roles, like years and years ago, back in the day, for almost until just recently, to be honest with you, there were the very specific parent roles. Mom definitely stayed home with the children, raised the children, ran the household. Dad went to work and provided for the family. Now, I also think that they both have their gifts. That's why God wants us to have 2 parents, to be married, and have your solid foundation as a solid family like that. You would be, I think, you're not being very honest with yourself if you think that these divided families and these separated families and these 2 households where the children go to one household and then they go to the other household. I mean, if you have to do that, I guess you've made that decision. But back in the day, people stayed together. They had their families. No, times weren't always fun. No, times weren't always easy. But that's kind of how God planned our life to be. And then things kind of changed. So I think, there's something to be said for traditional parenting roles, and definitely for the mother being the one that stays home, if at all possible. So I'm going to take a break, and when I come back, we're going to talk about the challenges of motherhood. We'll be right back. Have you ever wanted to witness the miraculous and walk where saints have walked? This is your chance. Join me, Lori Balderas, host of Fresh Catholic Podcast, and Father Matthew Miguel, as we walk with you through Italy's most sacred sites. From the Eucharistic miracles of Lanciano and Orvieto to the peace of Assisi, your heart will be transformed by these extraordinary moments of grace. You'll walk the hallowed streets of Rome, step into the history of the Vatican, and witness the places where faith has flourished for centuries. Each stop deepens your journey. Each miracle renews your soul. We invite you to join us on an unforgettable, life-changing experience.
Join us and let your faith come alive in Italy.
And we're back. So we kind of did the cherries, all the beauty part about being a mother, and then now we're going to talk about the challenges, because obviously being a mother is very challenging. There are really great times and then there's really hard times, But the beautiful part is that when you're a mother, you love your children. They came from your own body. You've raised them. God willing, you've got to nurse them. You have a very close bond with your children. You will never not love your children. I think that's pretty safe to say. You might be frustrated with your children at times. You might be angry at your children some of the times and disappointed sometimes, but you love them. You love them. They're your children. So I would say some of the challenges are, in general, the women who, like we talked about, can't conceive. I have a lot of friends and a lot of acquaintances that struggle with infertility, and I think that's a really sad thing. I know in particular, I have one of my past brides who I just particularly love and adore, and she is just one of my favorite women in the world. And she really was struggling to conceive, and her family was very sad. She would conceive, but she was having a lot of miscarriages, and that was really heartbreaking because she and her husband just wanted more than anything to be parents. I talked to her many times about it, and she eventually ended up getting pregnant. The baby was born, and now she has actually 2 boys. So it's just a miracle. And I just kept telling her, God hasn't, the baby God has planned for you, just it's not time yet. And God willing, he's going to give you a gift of a child. And if he doesn't, the adoption route might be something that you and your husband might look into. And I remember that she was kind of feeling like she wanted to try, different methods maybe of getting pregnant. And my only cautionary statement I made to her as a Catholic was that, we're not really intended to venture out and try scientific ways to conceive, And if people have made that choice, I'm not against it. I'm just saying that as Catholics, that's something we're not really supposed to venture down that path. That's probably a whole other episode. But I just want to say, if you're unable to get pregnant, keep trying. I mean, it's fun to try, right? And also just know that God's in charge and that God knows if you miscarry, there must be a reason for it. If you're unable to conceive, there must be a reason for it. We don't always know why God has our plan for us, and we may never know why. We can ask him for answers, but that doesn't mean he has to give them to us. He's in charge and he knows best. And so, have that. But I would say my advice is if you'd like to try to get pregnant, just, maybe venture into that marital bed every day till you get pregnant. I mean, like I said, it's fun to try. Okay. Also, hang on, checking my notes, want to make sure because I have a lot to cover. Some mothers struggle because they haven't had a good role model as a mother. I also have a lot of friends that either didn't have a mother around, say their mother passed away early on or in childbirth, or they, for whatever reason, the mom isn't part of their life, or their mother was a part of their life, but didn't really have that motherly way about her. I definitely know people that are in this situation, or mothers who were particularly harsh on them and they didn't feel a lot of love and nurturing from their mother. So that is certainly something that is a challenge when you haven't been given a good role model. So it's hard to then be a good mother. However, I also feel like sometimes if somebody's not had the best role model as a mother or no mother, they can move forward with that and say, okay, so these are the things that I didn't care for about my mother, so I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to be this kind of mother. So you can do that. You don't need to let your past or let your experience with your mother or lack of mother to make it so that it's just a completely negative experience for you and your future, or the future of you and your children, your future children. So kind of have that in your head of like, okay, so I want to be this type of mother. You can even make a list and say, these are the things I would like to do as a mother, or these are my goals for my children. certainly you can do that. So that's something, instead of taking it as a negative and keeping it as a negative, move forward and try to, look at other mothers that you look at and you think, wow, I really look at that mother and I really admire that mother. I'd like to try to be a mother like that. That might be something you can do. And just remember that, mothers are amazing and wonderful, but it's not easy to be a mother. And sometimes you can be, totally the greatest mom in the world, but we as mothers are also human. We also make mistakes. We also don't always make the right choices and decisions for ourselves or our children, which is because we're human and we're not perfect. But, we, as parents and mothers, we can also recognize when we do something wrong and apologize for it. Say, I'm sorry I did that way. I shouldn't have said or done that, and I apologize. And then as the children, maybe accept the apology. How about that? I know that there's been things that I've certainly done to or with my children that I'm not super proud of. Maybe I wasn't the best role model at times. There's things now that I look back and I think, wow, I can see that my children have certain traits because of things I taught them that me, Lori, today isn't very proud of, that I wish I would have done different, but I was a different person back when I was raising them. So not condoning it, not justifying it, just being honest about it. But I think, people need to realize that mothers are human and they do make mistakes. And there is, truly only one perfect mother in all history, and that's the Blessed Mother of our Lord Jesus Christ. She obviously is the greatest role model as a mother of all time. She had such an amazing and intense devotion and dedication to her son, Jesus. The fact that she just willingly, listened to the angel Gabriel who said, the Lord wants you to conceive this child. She said yes, changed the world because she did that. So thank you for that, Blessed Mother. I feel like she also had many, sad moments with her son, Jesus. I imagine the Blessed Mother, we hear about her throughout the Gospels, but she says certain things. We know that she, unlike Joseph, his earthly father, she does have some things she says in the Bible, but I really envision that she was a loving, kind, nurturing, patient mother. I think she obviously knew that this child was extraordinary and that he had an extraordinary path ahead of him. I think she also knew that there was going to be much sorrow revolving around her son. And of course, as we know, what she went through, his final moments were just the worst pain a mother could possibly go through. I don't want to cry, but she was, she's a beautiful role model, obviously. Also, I think it's beautiful and amazing that she has been the mother to all. Now she's the mother to all. She proves herself abundantly by showing what kind of a mother she is to our Lord. But then I know she fills a huge role for millions of people who look up to her. We do not, as Catholics, we do not, worship her. She's not God. She's not Jesus. She is the mother of Jesus. She has a very high standard in our Catholic faith, but she has taken on the role of mother of all. And I think she's really filled a void for many people who have lost their mother in one way or another. She's always there. You can always pray to the Blessed Mother for her intercession in your life. You don't pray to her. She's not going to change anything, but you say, please intercede for me to your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. And she's listening. She's always there. I always imagine, this is going to sound silly, but I always imagine that she's like a mother. She's always there. And I don't know about you, but I used to say to my mom, I'd ask her a question, I'd ask her a request. And what would she say? Wait till your father gets home and we'll ask him. Okay. So I kind of feel the same way about the Blessed Mother. I'll maybe go to her, Blessed Mother, what can I do in this situation? Please help me. Please give me insight. Please, ask your son when he has a moment to answer my prayer. Please pray for me, Blessed Mother. So I think she really fills a void for a lot of people. And I think she's just, if you envision her and just nurturing her son, and, I just imagine that. Again, if you've seen The Passion of the Christ, there's, obviously she's very distraught through, 99% of that movie. But there's a few moments where they show her when she's not in such a stressful situation, interacting with Jesus. And it's just beautiful. It's like, I wish I could just have those little moments encapsulated so I can click on those and watch those every now and then without watching the whole Passion of the Christ. But anyway, she's a beautiful mother to all. Some of the challenges we have are natural challenges, just as far as raising children is a challenge in itself. It's exhausting, physically exhausting, emotionally exhausting. You're very anxious. I don't know if you sleep super great for the first, maybe their whole life, because you're constantly worrying about your children. I think there's things that, challenges just in trying to set boundaries, trying to have rules and guidelines for your children because you are worried about them and you want them to make good choices and decisions so that they can become amazing adults, so that then they can go on and be a good mother and parent too. Some of the challenges are, they're not in our control. They're in other people's control. So it's hard when you want to be, cushioning your children or wrapping them in bubble wrap or whatever so that they don't fall off a cliff. But, children, they like to buck the system. They like to stretch their wings. They like to make their own decisions and choices. And sometimes we have to just let them fall on their face and bang themselves up a little bit so that they can see that you're trying to guide them in the right way so that maybe they learn from the things that you learned the hard way. You'd like to make it easier on them. But sometimes you have to let them trip and fall a few times. Some of our challenges are self-inflicted. We sometimes make decisions that cause a bigger challenge in your life as a mother or your children's life. So some things are, where you consciously make a decision that's going to bring a bigger challenge into your mothering life. So some of the self-inflicted problems that I'm noticing in, the motherhood topic, we'll say, are, I don't know if you've noticed this, but there seems to be a trend, I'm going to say rather currently, where there's an indifference to motherhood. There is, some people don't seem to value motherhood like they used to. They will just think, I don't think I want to be a mother. I think it's more important that I get an animal and I'll put the animal in a stroller and walk the animal around. Or, I'd rather lay in bed all day, or I'd rather go on a trip without children. I'd rather just not have children. No, that is honestly a choice. And I'm not bashing people that do that. I'm just bringing up that I've noticed that this is kind of a trend of motherhood, I can take it or leave it. Now, I think that's really sad because, like I said, originally, the original plan of God was to create us to have children. And if we don't have children, then there's not going to be a population. And this is actually happening. We are not replenishing the human supply. So when people have this attitude of I don't know, what motherhood isn't that great. Why would I even want to do it? Well, there's good and bad to it, but ultimately it's a very important job to be a mother. And if we don't have mothers and we don't have children, we have no human race. So it's very important. I've also noticed a trend that women aren't really wanting to get married like they used to. I know when I was a little girl, I always wanted to be married. I always wanted to be a mother. Since I was a very small little child, I would have my baby dolls. I would pretend to get married. I would have my little fake ring. I would, play mommy. And there wasn't a daddy in my neighborhood. Well, there was lots of little boys, but they're not going to come over and play mommy and daddy. But I would just pretend, that I had my little family, and I loved it so much. But now I've noticed that women they're not wanting to get married. I think this is coming off the Me Too movement, and where all of a sudden there was this shift, and the women, were kind of anti-man and didn't want to be around men. And, they were getting all their women power from all their women friends. And, we don't need men. We don't want to get married. We're just going to, hang out with our friends all the time. I think that's very, very sad. And I think men are amazing and great. And again, God made us go together so that we could have children. And that was the original plan. So, I just think that, and I'll be talking, obviously, near Father's Day, we'll do a whole Father's Day episode and talk about how great men are. But I think women need to reconsider men. I think men are great. I think we need men and they need us. So let's get back to wanting to get married. Women wanting children alone is also a very interesting phenomenon that's going on right now. Again, back to the thing where they're saying, well, we don't need men. We could do all this by ourselves. We're just going to have a baby. We're just going to have artificial insemination. We're going to have a baby. We're going to raise the baby alone. Well, okay, I guess you can do that. But a child needs a mom and a dad. Moms and dads have wonderful gifts. They both have their things to offer their children that are going to give their children a very well-rounded childhood and life. They both have, amazing things to offer their children and a lot of gifts. So I think that's very important to realize that, yeah, women can have children alone. And there's some women that end up, their husband passes away or there's a problem. I'm not talking about that. That's something that you didn't plan on or you didn't foresee. And then, yes, of course, your community comes around you, your family comes around you and helps you to raise that child. But, let's try to look at the original plan of what God had for us, because he had a really perfect plan. And it doesn't mean you're not going to have struggles or problems as a married couple, but you need to stick it together for those kids. Some women are actively and purposely and unapologetically having abortions. They get pregnant, they're not responsible, they decide, this is very inconvenient for me, so I'm just going to go have an abortion. Well, if you're Catholic, especially, that is a very, very grave decision and sin that you're making. So that's kind of trending right now, and people don't seem to think it's at all important, or that it's all, that's just a clump of cells. It's not a clump of cells, it's a human being. And we all know what happens when you have an abortion. There's no way to candy coat it. It's not a good decision. There's so many other things you could do instead. So please reconsider. If you know of somebody that's considering doing that, please try to give them other options. There's certainly other options. So I think that's a very sad trend, and it's a very, it's very celebrated these days, and it's very perplexing to me. So that's all I'm going to say on that, because I could do a whole episode on that. And last but not least, men thinking they can have babies. I don't know what to say about that, everybody. The fact that some people are encouraging people or enabling people to think that, it's not true. So that's that. That's all I have to say about that. So when we come back, we're going to talk about a little bit happier stuff, gratitude and legacy of motherhood. We'll be right back. Let me tell you about all things Fresh Catholic. So buckle up. We have a podcast with weekly topic episodes and Fresh Catholic Daily, the daily Mass readings, on all platforms and YouTube. Like, share, subscribe, rate, and review. That would really help. Our website, freshcatholic.com, has an online store with merchandise and coffee, a blog, comics, info about our pilgrimage to Italy in September of this Jubilee year, and Fresh Catholic courses with educator Charles Merritt, including the Hail Mary, the Our Father, Sin, Sacraments and Grace, Advent, Angels, and Virtues. We're on Instagram and Facebook at Fresh Catholic with short videos every day. Email me at lori@freshcatholic.com. I'd love to hear from you. And please consider becoming a Patreon or sponsor to help support our mission of drawing people to the faith or back to the faith. Phew! Spread the word and join the fun. Thanks so much. Bye. And we're back. So let's talk about the positives. So gratitude and legacy of motherhood. Obviously, if your mother has given you life, you should be very grateful because she decided to conceive you. She decided not to have an abortion, and she decided that she's going to stick it out with you and see you through all your many ups and downs in your life. And there are many. But what I'd like to ask you now is, what kind of mother do you, or, what kind of mother do you have? I was going to say, what kind of mother do you or did you have? What kind of mother did you have? Think about that. Think about, how would you describe her? What did you learn from her? What traits did you get from her, or talents or skills? And what personality traits did you get from her? So because I do love the study of people, and I love to see, first of all, how people look like their mother or don't look like their mother for that matter. What different traits do you get from your mother? I just have always been fascinated by this. Don't you love it when you have a friend or somebody and you meet their mother and you think, oh my gosh, I can see what she, these different things she gets from her mother or he gets from his mother. So my mother is a very adorable little British woman. She's very proper, and she's very friendly, and she's very smiley, and my dad used to call her Pollyanna. Sometimes I don't think he did that in a nice way, but she's always just had a bright, cheery attitude, and she was a very devoted mother. She was a very dedicated mother. She really encouraged me a lot. I spent a lot of time with my mother, and she's just a delightful little lady, and I feel like she's very beloved in our small town we were raised in, and she, is very beloved by her children and grandchildren, and she, I feel very grateful that I had a mother like her. The traits I think I've gotten from her are, I am also friendly. My youngest son and I always joke and say we definitely get our charm from her. She's a people person. She just, exudes kindness to people. So I think I get my positive side. Anytime I'm feeling down, I kind of hear in my ear my mother saying, well, what's the positive of this? Or why do you think that happened? And I find myself doing that. So I appreciate her positivity. The type of mom I was when I was raising my children was, I was a very firm mother. I had a lot of rules. I had a lot of, I was very matter of fact. If they weren't supposed to do something, they weren't supposed to do it. They would get in trouble if they did. If anybody messed with my children, like I said earlier, I would just come right at them. But that being said, I also would listen if somebody had an issue with my children, or my children had done something that wasn't the best thing in the world. I would assess it. They didn't always, if somebody came to me and said, this child did this, I wouldn't say, oh, no, they didn't. They would never do that. I never did that. I would listen to both sides. I would assess it. If my children needed to be, have a consequence, they would get it. If they didn't, I would stick up for them. I would say I was protective, maybe overprotective, and they didn't just get to do anything they wanted to do. I really had them on a tight leash because I really loved and valued them, and I didn't want anything horrific to happen to them. You know, I almost lost my entire family in my accident, so I'm a little more hypersensitive to my children being safe. And I would say for the most part, they've always been really good about honoring that and knowing that I have that struggle, that I want to know where they are and if they're okay, and, you know, that they're making good choices and decisions. But, you know, I really just absolutely loved my children when they were children. I tried to give them a really good childhood like I had. I tried to allow them to have a lot of structure, but also that they got a lot of creative and happy pretend time. And we did a lot of fun things together. We had a lot of, you know, like events. I liked a lot of celebration when they were growing up. There was always something to look forward to. There was always something coming up to look forward to that we were going to celebrate or have a, you know, a fun time. So I like to think that, you know, with all the maybe structure, that there was also that side. And I think I gave them a really good childhood, their dad and I. And I think my daughter, Kaylee, now, I think she's, back up, I'm sorry. The mom I am today is a different mother. My children are all grown up. I always really support them, and I like to, you know, I'm proud of them. I'll tell them when I'm proud of them. I like to encourage them. I'm always in their corner. However, because they're adults and they have their own life and their own families, I try to also step back a bit. I don't get involved in their, you know, all day, every day. If they make decisions I don't care for, I just don't say anything unless they ask me, and then I'll tell them how I feel. But ultimately, it's their life. I trust them. I pray for them. I know that they're being the best, you know, adults they can be. And I just, you know, I just try to let them have their life, and so that they can, you know, look to me and ask me questions when they need me. So, and then my daughter, Kaylee, now, she is an amazing mother. She is also very hands-on with her children. She's very strict with them, which I love. She doesn't just let them do whatever they want. They need to be loving and kind and accountable to other people. If they do something that hurts or harms someone else, she definitely, you know, has them remedy that. She also is, you know, she's very loving and kind, but she is very strict, and I appreciate that about her. And my daughter-in-law, Chloe, is a wonderful mother as well. She's very loving, and she takes care of her little family, and I don't get to be around them as often because they live out of state, but I just think they're both being wonderful mothers, and I'm really proud of them. Last but not least, how do I want to be remembered as a mother? I would hope that my children think that I did give them a good and happy childhood, that I guided them and was a good role model to them, and that they understand, you know, that I totally admit and acknowledge my faults and my failures as a mother, but that ultimately my decisions were in their best interest. And I hope they know how much I love them, and that being a mother has been one of the greatest joys of my life. Even in my sorrows with them, it's been one of the greatest joys of my life, and I hope that I'm remembered in a positive way. So I am going to send you all off now on this week. Still be in the glow of Mother's Day and Mother's Month. And I hope that you were treated beautifully and wonderfully on Mother's Day. And I hope that you are treated with much respect and dignity and love and kindness. And I hope that your children feel just saturated in the warm glow of your love. So with that being said, tune into my social media this week, because I'll be doing little Mother's Day, what do I want to call, posts and reels. So check those out. Also, we are coming up on our pilgrimage deadline to pay for that. So now that we have a new pope, Father Matthew texted me yesterday when we found out who the new pope was, and he said, oh my gosh, now when we go on our pilgrimage, we all get to meet the new pope. So that's another reason to go on our pilgrimage is it's the Jubilee year. We have a new pope. Let's all go. Go to our website, freshcatholic.com. There's a link in our show notes to click on the Italy trip. Check it out. Put down your deposit, pay your fees, get your passport, and let's head out in September to Italy for the pilgrimage. Have a beautiful, blessed day and week. Thank you for stopping by today. Thank you. Love you. Bye.